when it starts crossing that barrier to, if she's aware and not distracted, then she'll think that my hand is pretty close to her hand, and then past that window to actually touching her hand and seeing the emotional damage type of what that is. Hey, I'm Demon Dev, and basically what I'm trying to do here is come up with a better way to test out how I'm going to develop the romance mechanics, not just for like the sense of realism and like trying to, figure out how I can create not just things that players can do in the game, but like things that will be fun and have that realistic strategic component. Like, as I've talked about in previous videos, you should check out kiss mechanic and stuff like that. I need to know what my distance is from the character, and it might be obvious in real life, but in VR, partially because of field of view, partially because of a lot of reasons, gauging that distance is really tough. So if I can act out what's going on and then record those movements both with tracked VR controllers, but then also just trying to play off of walking around in a space, I think I'll be able to figure out, okay, what will work really well? Can I make a mechanic that allows the user to cue up something like a facial expression or eye contact? Maybe I said something funny and it's a group setting, and I've queued up like sort of like a shared sort of gaze smile that at those moments I can look to the character that I'm interested in or not, and maybe that goes poorly, but those sorts of ideas where I can think, okay, what would naturally happen? I don't have anything to to sit on it, but if I was like next to her on the bus, what are my opportunities? Can I, go for a handhold? Can I, do the stupid yawn behind the head thing? And how can I pre-visualize that? Because in VR, you're really horse blinders. You can really barely see things that are closer than like a foot, and you definitely don't have peripheral in that range. So one thing that I'm doing is this comic frame, which you can kind of see in some of my other videos as well, where I get to see a profile view. So of course from first person perspective, so like if I was standing here kind of looking down on the scene like the camera is, that's all well and good. But as soon as the camera perspective is me looking out this way, then I'm really not able to tell if I'm near someone, and a mechanic of like how close your hand is to their hand or how close your head is to their head, like, something like a nuzzle action, given like maybe it's been a super long day, you're coming back from a field trip, and there's kind of that tiredness, lowered tension on being sensitive to actions like, oh, is this romance or is this just somebody being tired? That kind of ambiguity is where these mechanics should really shine, and the conflict that comes out of it. Because that can go both well or poorly. I've certainly had experiences where being on that edge has been jumped on as like, okay, this is, not what I was expecting, or, it's met halfway, and that's how things progress. So those sorts of moments are what I'm trying to make, not just, part of a cutscene that happens, but a mechanic that the player can just look for opportunities to use. Like at any time, if my hand is near her hand, then I will get this profile view giving me a meter, as you can see in the kiss mechanic video, that will give me a meter of how close my hand is to hers. And when it starts crossing that barrier to, if she's aware and not distracted, then she'll think that my hand is pretty close to her hand, and then past that window to actually touching her hand and seeing the emotional damage type of what that is. So anyways, I'm really excited to kind of explore what kind of walking around in a silly environment like this. I still have to do some like tracker setup for making sure that the camera angle can move around to give a better idea of what's going on. And that is part of the difficulty, is in VR you are locked in this first-person perspective, and quite honestly, if you were to look at what's going on with a lot of first-person games, like as far as the animation control rigs of the character from a third-person perspective, it'd be pretty creepy and I want to solve that. I want to make it work on both levels, from a first-person perspective, so you know what's going on, but also from a third-person perspective, because I've got that comic frame that's in your UI, so you can see, okay, what's going on. No, people who are, you know, trying to be a little bit closer to each other than friendship would normally make room for, are not probably staring at their hand to judge the distance. But then if you don't have that feedback, how will you know? Well, I've got a comic panel that will show you a cross section of the side view. So you'll see exactly anytime you come close to doing something. And this goes for magic and combat as well. When you throw a fist, it's kind of difficult in VR, especially because this is like, throwing your arms. I say it, this character. You can fight anyone, I guess, but it's kind of difficult to judge, especially because you want to do those actions as fast as possible. How close is my fist to connecting? I know one of my most frustrating experiences when I first started doing VR stuff was, okay, I'm like slashing the sword and I'm like reaching out to my full extent. Am I even close enough to land a hit? And what are the collision boxes? Like, even if I am close enough, am I still even not close enough because the collider is like brought in a little bit? Seeing it from a third-person perspective from the side view should give me exactly that visual distance, and I think that will be really satisfying to apply both in combat and in romance. So anyways, really excited about that, and just kind of having fun with new ways of developing this game. It's been a core dream of the game for a while that you can juggle both talking to someone and, maybe trying to inch closer and make a move, going for a handhold or a hug or a kiss, and being accepted or rejected on that, not just after doing the action, but depending on the context and how aware they are of your intentions, they might be able to intercept and kind of stop you midway, or just try to escape the scenario if they're not into it. Furthermore, they may be into the romantic exchange, whatever it is, from hand-holding to kissing, but then that may not actually determine your relationship for the game. A lot of games have relationships where you kind of max out a meter, and then that means you get to date them if you want to. That is not what's going on in Double Demons. In Double Demons, there is not just a separate bar for friendship and romance or attraction, but there's also a separate formula that AIs use for kind of like the heat of the moment passion of romance, assuming that they're attracted to you. And then additionally, determining what they want in a relationship, if they want a relationship, and how that looks. So you could certainly have, and that is the plan for some of the ways certain character arcs can go, is that you could get to the point with a character where you do have a connection and they are into you and you are into them, and you go for a kiss and they return it, which is fun. But then afterwards, if you try to bring that into a, hey, let's start going out, that's not a a guarantee. They might not be sure about that. They might want to kind of keep things lower key for a while, or they might not be looking for a relationship at all, at which point the player comes into an interesting point where, are you going to try to keep going with whatever this is, or, pursue someone else, or try to change their mind? That's the kind of relationship conflict that I'm really excited to explore with Double Demons. So stay tuned.